G'day guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sean. This is my wonderful girlfriend Alexandra. If you're new here and you're wondering what we talk about, I talk about tech, I do gaming tutorials, streaming, anything tech PC related really. If you're here, it's probably because you've watched part 1 where Alexandra was talking about the K780 keyboard from Logitech and the Logitech MX Master mouse. I gave this to her to use for a few weeks to compare against the Apple keyboard and Apple Magic Mouse. And if you heard back in part 1, I was really complaining about how the Apple Magic Mouse didn't have like a left and right click. So if you want to do any sort of gaming with it, it's obviously not the most suitable mouse. So Logitech sent this over for Alexandra to test out. She's been using it for a few weeks now, and we're about to hear from her what she thinks about it and the pros and cons of both. So let's begin. Cheers. Okay, so just a quick summary. The keyboard was the Logitech K780 wireless keyboard and the Logitech MX Master 2S mouse. So both of these connect via Bluetooth to Alexandra's 5K iMac. That is her daily driver. That's what she's using every single day. And pretty much everything that she does for work is done on the iMac. I'm a PC person. I've got my own situation with my Corsair keyboards. This is for her. So my first impressions with this keyboard was that the build quality we both agreed on was really good. The mouse I've always been a big fan on. But what did you think about this keyboard and mouse?
Well, okay, so keyboard to keyboard I'll do first, I guess. With the Logitech one, it is substantially heavier than the Apple one, and I think that really contributes to like overall build quality feeling a lot more luxurious. It's actually way nicer to type on, which I never expected that I would enjoy.
I never expected that she would say that it's the nicest thing to type on or nicer to type on. She types on like on average thousands and thousands and thousand words a day. So for her to say that this is a real typist keyboard and a real good keyboard for typing on, actually blew me away because she's always been a massive fan of the Apple keyboard. So
I think the reason why is because it is quieter, and the distance between like when you actually originally touch it and push it down is a little bit deeper than the Apple keyboard, so it feels a little bit more satisfying to press. Now, I did think that I would have an issue with the round buttons just purely because everything with my Apple computer is like all rectangular, all perfectly symmetrical, and round to me is not usually something that I would enjoy. But I think that because they're round and they have a slight concave facet, I guess, to the top, it is quite nice to press. Now,
it like perfectly sort of mimics the tips of your fingers, how they're rounded. So I feel like when you're touch typing, your fingers can naturally find the keys a little bit easier versus a square flat key where you can't really differentiate. This, I mean, I feel like the positioning of where your fingers go is a little bit more natural.
I also feel like it's probably the medium in between step between something like an Apple keyboard and something more like a mechanical keyboard, because I get the satisfaction of how much it depresses without actually having to hear the clicky clacky frustrating annoyingness that comes from most mechanical keyboards.
Like, I think if you look at the Apple keyboards and if you look at the Apple laptop keyboards, you can see that over time they've been trying to make it slimmer and slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. So when you're pressing down on the Apple keys, they don't travel very far. So I think from a typing perspective, it would be nice for like a lot of people preferred the old Apple keyboards on the laptops. I know that you definitely preferred the old keyboard because the keys traveled a little bit further. These ones feel a little bit flat and clacky. It takes a little bit of time to get used to.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the butterfly mechanism that's in the new Apple keyboards.
But they really, like Logitech really talks about the fact that this keyboard is for silent typing, and being in a small room where it echoes quite a bit, being right next to her, I can't even hear her type on this thing. And I think because it is a little bit thicker as well, it gives a bit of dampening, sound dampening to the keys when they bottom out, so it's a bit nicer.
And I definitely didn't realize how much I was actually enjoying it until I sat next to Sean one night when he was streaming and listened to him type, and I nearly snapped. I was just like, that is way too loud. Like, get keyboard typing away from me. It was too much for me. But I do have a few cons, and I will say that even though I would favor the Logitech K780, is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. I would favor the K780 over my wireless Apple keyboard for typing for long periods. The biggest con that I can see is essentially where you have your arrows just here as compared with where you have your arrows on the Apple keyboard. You have, once I got into the habit of using an Apple keyboard with those arrows, which is a typical desktop keyboard, I guess, it's really hard to kind of get back into a new habit of typing on those arrows below like your backspace, your enter, your shift keys. Now, I would actually be okay with it, I think, if the keys were the same size as all the other keys, but they're so much smaller. So I'm constantly reaching for them and then hitting the wrong ones. Now, this is something that you find all the time on laptop keyboards. So it makes sense that it's on this because this is for portability. This keyboard is so that you can type on your iPads or your iOS devices or other portable devices that you would take elsewhere for like a movable office. And I do get that, but at the same time, I have a MacBook Pro with the keys in a very similar configuration, and I tire of it really, really quickly. So when I'm typing on my laptop at home, the most common reason I would move to my iMac is to get away from the arrow keys. And so for this to have the exact same situation as my laptop in terms of the positioning and the size of the arrow keys, that actually really, really frustrates me. I'm not someone that backspaces. If I make a mistake when I'm typing, I use the arrow keys. And so that's something that is seriously frustrating. Like, that's the only real problem that I'm having with this. And it's all the time. I
think with this keyboard, if you're someone that's not using the arrow keys very much, there's very little to complain about it overall.
Agreed.
I think if you're the type of person that just uses the cursor or the mouse to actually move back in text, or you're not someone that uses the arrow keys really at all very much, like I personally hardly ever use the arrow keys because I'm usually gaming or typing, or if I need to adjust something like where the cursor is, I just use the mouse to do that. So if that's not a big problem to you, then I think we can highly recommend this keyboard. Considering I think this keyboard comes in for around about $99.95 Australian dollars.
It's really worth it.
And the fact that I actually found you can use this with the mobile devices, and you can actually slot in like your iPad or your mobile phone.
Through this channel, just here.
I know that you haven't really tested it, but I've been using it a few times when I've been on my PC and streaming, and I've got the iPad as like a monitor, and I can type back to people during the chat on this keyboard with the iPad, and I find that experience to be quite seamless. So I think that's a really great built-in function that I think for the value, it's you can't really complain too much. The mouse. Let's talk about the mouse.
I'll just say I do really love it, and for typing, it wins the battle.
So the mouse was, like I said, the MX Master 2S. I've been a big fan of the MX Master for a long time. It's what I use at work every single day. Alexandra has been using the Apple Magic Mouse for as long as she can probably think about using computers and iMacs and whatnot. And what did you think of it? I love it, but
okay, well,
it's not my mouse.
This one I'm a little bit more on the fence about. And I wouldn't say I'm on the fence in terms of like I can't make a decision. I just think that the differences between the Magic Mouse versus the MX Master 2S, it's a mouthful. The differences there are that they both have very, very different strengths and very, very different opportunities. And I'm saying opportunities, not weaknesses, because Apple taught me that. And I am just programmed now.
We both worked at Apple, so.
But what I can say in terms of the benefits and strengths of the MX Master 2S, my God,
yeah, I know.
is I really thoroughly enjoy the scroll wheel. It is quite satisfying when you get to unleash it and go all the way to the bottom of the page very, very quickly.
It's called the hyper fast scrolling.
Honestly, that is really, really fun. I really thoroughly enjoy that. I like the very clear delineation between left and right click. I'm never struggling and I never make a mistake. Often on a Magic Mouse, people are used to accidentally right-clicking.
It's not a very wide mouse, the Magic Mouse.
No, it's very, very narrow.
Very narrow.
Very, very narrow. And so people often accidentally use two fingers to click when they're trying to just use one finger, and therefore they highlight the right click option.
And I always think that like the number one thing people say when they get this mouse for the first time is, how do I right click?
Yeah.
Like it's the number one thing, 100%.
I mean, I personally haven't had that many issues with it, nor do I really care if I accidentally right click, but I never accidentally right click on this one. The other, I guess, really good a good part about it is just how ergonomic it is. It's clear that people that designed this really thought about how people spend a long time using a mouse all day.
This design hasn't changed for like probably 10 years, I would say at least.
Clearly it's very successful, and I didn't get any sort of fatigue from it. It very much sits perfectly in the palm of my hand.
Palm gripping.
I palm grip it up. It's
not a claw grip. It's not a claw grip. This is a claw grip.
Yeah.
Claw grip means that you're basically clawing it. Palm is meaning it's actually molding into the palm of your hand.
And that does feel like I have a little bit more control. I'm not finding a lack of control with the Magic Mouse, but I'm noticing more control with this. So in terms of those sorts of things, it's great. What I will say in terms of its opportunities is that having been in the Apple universe for as long as I have, and having kind of, I guess, matured over time at the same time as all of the new intuition that is built into all of their devices in terms of user experience.
All the gestures.
I am so used to intuitive gestures that happen either on a device's screen, like an iPad or an iPhone, or on a Magic Trackpad, which is on my laptop, or on a Magic Mouse, which is with my iMac. So because this is built out of glass and it can read the fact that I want to switch between desktops, it can read the fact that I want to swipe up really quickly, therefore launching Launchpad or Mission Control, whatever they're called these days, I don't know. That I'm far too used to be able to really quickly convert and tell you whether the other mouse can do a good enough job, because at the moment it feels like it doesn't do a good enough job. So the way that you can do those sorts of things on this mouse, you can program it in so that there's where your thumb rests in here on this little textured panel, there is a button that when you with your thumb push down,
you can customize that button to do whatever you want in the software. So through the Logitech software, they've given you the option when you press down, you can, I don't know, launch an application, but in this case we've changed it so when you press down you can swipe or change desktops or launch, I think, a mission control.
Yeah, this one's mission control.
And then I think we've got these scrolly wheel.
1 second, let me get to that.
Okay. So at least with the Logitech software, you can actually go ahead and you can change what each button does. I think that's at least, you know, they've thought about the fact that, okay, people are going to be going from one mouse to another. We've got to make sure we give them all the options.
I guess the problem is that it's not something that's an intuitive action for me to press down to see all of my apps that are open. Whereas I can't even tell you what the gesture is on my mouse, but if I was to need to do it, it would just happen naturally for me. So I am consciously making a choice to press down in order to do that, and I'm struggling to remember to do that. The other part is that I switch between desktops hyper frequently. I am someone that usually has 30 tabs open in Safari, 30 tabs open in Chrome.
It's pretty common because most people with an iMac don't have multiple monitors. Most people with an iMac have one big screen and they have everything there. So I think the fact that Apple's built in multiple desktops, people do take advantage of that.
And I usually have 4 desktops open at least, plus a second monitor, so that way I can have probably my mail open, probably 2 different pages documents, a couple PDFs. Like my desktop
pretty
is
insane.
scattered.
Pretty insane.
I use a lot of things at a lot of times. Now, you can program it in this side scroll button / wheel to be able to swipe between 2 desktops. That is really helpful, except for the fact that if I accidentally knock it with my thumb, which happens so often, it thinks that I'm trying to go between 2 desktops, but it doesn't make it all the way across.
Halfway.
It goes halfway, or sometimes what even happens is that it doesn't move at all in terms of what I can see, but I can't click on anything. So I think that something's happened to my iMac where it's actually just, I have to reset the wheel.
Has to be a very deliberate action for it to work.
Yeah, so it's kind of, that's really not intuitive at all to me. Even though I think after time it would become that way, because sliding a wheel side to side makes a lot of sense if you're trying to swipe between desktops. But that is not something that I can learn very quickly. And it is something that is frustrating me quite a lot just because I can accidentally bump it frequently. Other than that, the comfort, everything else is incredible. It's a great mouse. As I said, I love this scroll wheel so much.
It's kind of similar to the Apple key, so the Logitech keyboard. It's like, unless you're someone that uses those arrow keys all the time, the keyboard's great. With the mouse, if you're someone that's not switching desktops all the time, then the mouse is great. But you've really got to think about how you're using your computer, how you're using your Apple iMac every day, and whether or not the learning curve to get over that is worth the investment. I will say though, like, if you're not going to use it on an Apple Mac, at least you can use it on a PC or whatever else. So it's not like you can't really use this with a PC, whether that you can use with any computer that you have in the future as well. So
I think as well, like, over time, as I've gotten a little bit more, I guess, regimented in my ways and I know my own workflow, I find change often very difficult in terms of that side of things. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try new things. It just means that you should buy things from places that allow you to exchange or return. Because to me, I would never have bought either of these options for myself, and yet I actually way prefer typing on the Logitech keyboard. And so it kind of throws in another option for me. It makes me think about how will this evolve and what will I want in the future, as opposed to me just sticking to my guns constantly with Apple devices. So it is a nice refresher. It is a nice change. But yeah, I think there's some issues there that I'm yet to figure out whether I'll forgive for.
Yeah. Now, before we end this video, I just wanted to talk about one last thing, which is where we plan to go from here. I've already reached out to Logitech once and they said they don't have it, but I'm really hoping that we can get the Logitech Craft keyboard. I just showed Alexandra this keyboard. She got her first response was, ooh, like that looks exciting, because it's got a dial wheel. One thing we forgot to mention with this keyboard was the fact that, like, my first observation was there was no brightness up and down key, which I think is the most kind of oversighted thing on this keyboard personally for me. The fact that you don't have a brightness up and down for when you're doing things on your tablet, on your iPad, or on your iMac, or whatever it might be, I feel like is a real crucial thing. But maybe that was done on purpose, because they've brought out this Logitech Craft keyboard, which is in Australia $299.95, which is very expensive. It's got this special dial for doing things in Photoshop, Premiere, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint for customization. So I guess through software you can use that wheel to do whatever you want. It's kind of like what Microsoft has done with their dial that goes onto their Microsoft Surface desktops and things like that. This keyboard addresses things like, gives you a bit more spacing for the arrow keys that Alexandra was talking about. It has a backlight built into it, so at night time you can type in the dark. It has a rechargeable battery via USB Type-C.
It looks like they've kept some of the cool features as well, though, because it's rectangular keys, but they have indentations that are round as opposed to round keys.
It's got brightness up and down, as I mentioned, backlight, rechargeable battery. It really is aimed at the Apple users, because you can tell even on their homepage, like, they're using it with an iMac. So it's meant for people who are wanting to switch from an Apple keyboard and want to go maybe to using something a little bit more premium with a little bit more feature. So I'm going to reach out to the Logitech again, see if they can send that over so we can test it out. But let me know, guys, what you think of this keyboard. If you've got any questions, let Alexandra know in the comments. As always, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you like this video, like it. If you didn't like it, give it a dislike and maybe tell us why. If you want to see more of Alexandra, definitely let her know as well. I'm very grateful that the fact that she uses, I just forced it onto her and she used it for a couple of weeks and I didn't get too many complaints. So thanks for watching this video, and guys, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
I forgot to say one thing.
What?
My issue where it doesn't actually remember the driver's situation.
What's that?
Okay, so like,
tell them.
Essentially, I don't know whether this is actually an issue for anyone that does a lot of that doesn't do a lot of typing, but when I am typing and I want to copy something from, let's say, a Google Drive document, and I want to paste it into an email, I don't want to paste it in the same font size or the same color or the same underline, etc., etc. All the features of the font that were in the Google Drive, I do not want to transfer over to my email that I'm typing at the time. So there's a little keyboard shortcut that I use that's Shift-Option-Command-Paste, Shift-Option-Command-V, and sometimes when I wake my computer from sleep, this will forget that that's a possibility. So for whatever reason, it just doesn't remember all the keyboard shortcuts all the time.
Yeah. And
Sean was saying that it might be an issue with some drivers, but I don't know.
Could be a Logitech issue, could be an Apple issue, could be a Google Drive issue, it could be all three combined. It's really hard. We'll just have to see how it goes. If we do find it fixed, maybe, we'll let you guys know in part 3 or something like that. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Cheers.